So what I can do is I can embed inside or outside as well, anything is fine. So what I can say here, C hyphen, we already know how the component composition work. C hyphen life hyphen cycle hyphen child. So we are just embedding it right now, and let's deploy this. So let's refresh the page now. I have increased the size of the console just to see the order of our methods. So now, as we have seen in the diagram, it should first call the constructor of parent and the connected callback of the parent. So it called the parent constructor, parent connected callback. Then it, while rendering the HTML, it saw, okay, a child component is available. It went to the child component, it runs the lifecycle hooks again. So it comes to the child constructor, child connected callback, then child rendering completed, it called the child rendered callback, and then it comes back to the parent callback. This is how this flow works, and in the code as well we proved it, the execution order. So the constructor and the connected callback usually run from parent to child, and the render callback work from child to parent. Okay, so now let me show you the performance impact of render callback method. Okay, so to prove my point, this method gets called up every time you change anything in the component. So let's add input field here. So I have added the basic input field type text, and on key up I'm calling the change handler, and I'm printing the name below that input field. So I'll call the change handler in the JS file. The change handler is the basic method, that the custom method that we are creating. I'll say this dot name equal to event dot target dot name dot value, sorry, and I'll create a property name. Okay, so now, as I said, this render callback will re-render again and again whenever something change or something render on the HTML. And if you have added something inside this, it will also gets called up again and again. So suppose you have added a function inside and you are changing something in the input field, that function also get automatically called up 10-20 times based on the times the HTML is changing. Okay, so let's see if we change right now something, or if I type something in the input field, it update the name, and as soon as the name update, it will print the console that number of times. Okay, let's deploy this. So let's refresh the page, and if you see right now, the order is the same: parent constructor, connected callback, child connected, child render, and the parent render. I'll clean this up by this icon. You can clean your console. And now if I type 0, now you can see I type 4 characters and 4 times your parent render callback has been called. If I say 2, see the number is increasing. Now it becomes 6. Now it becomes 10. So this method gets called again and again, and if you are doing something inside this, just make sure it's not getting called up again and again. And sometimes people face a issue of infinite loop because they run the loop inside it, heavy loops, and it never ending job, right? So use this life cycle very carefully, and just remember the points that I showed in the slide. So we talked about the mounting phase, and we have seen how it render, in which order it renders, and you can pause the video and go through this particular flow chart, because this gives you a very good understanding how the things are working behind the scene. And once we start writing a real-time scenario with this lifecycle hook, you realize the power of these lifecycle hooks. Okay, so that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next video. In this video, we'll talk about lifecycle hooks in unmounting phase. And unmounting phase is also called as the removing phase. Okay, so under this phase, we have only one method, that is disconnected callback method. This method is very important to avoid the memory leaks issues. I'll show you in an example. So these are the points to remember. This component fires when the component is removed from the DOM. It flow from parent to child, and this callback method is specific to a Lightning Web component. It isn't from the HTML custom element specification. So the thing you need to remember is this component fires when the component is removed from the DOM. So let's go to our VS Code and implement this. So as I said, this component this method gets called only when you remove something from the DOM. To actually achieve that scenario, what we're gonna do is we already have a child component and a parent component, and in the parent component we already have a child component, right? So I'll create a button and try to achieve the scenario like on click of that button I'll show this component, and on click of button I'll remove this component. Okay, so first I'll remove this input field. I don't need this to demonstrate. I'll remove this as well. And in the child component we're going to create our disconnected callback method. So let's first create the button only. So I'll create a button above my child component. I'll just copy paste the code. It's a pretty simple lightning button tag, variant brand. It gives the blue color. The label of the button is show child, title is show child, title is for accessibility. On click I'm gonna call handle click. So I'll create this handle click method here. I'll keep it empty right now. And then I have given a class of left margin small. Okay, just to give the margin little bit to the left side. So this button is there. I want this child to be visible only when you click on this button show child. So what I can do here is I can wrap this component using if true directive, and I can put my child component under that directive if true. So if the expression here evaluates to true, this component will true, this component will load, right? So let's create this property first. So we'll create a property is child visible, and I can say right now it's false. So by default child will not be visible, and on click of handle child I want to show that to true. Okay, and I want another button on click of which I want to remove this again, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'll create another button just below this, and I'll say remove child, and I'll say remove child. I'll keep the handle click same. Okay, and what we're gonna do in the handle click, instead of setting it to true, we'll say just toggle it. So not of this dot child visible. So first click make false to true, second click make true to false. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna use this property to hide the buttons as well, so that at a time only one button be visible. So I'll say if true is visible is true, so that at a time only one button be visible. So I'll say if true is visible is remove one, right? We want button remove one, right? We want whenever the child is visible, then the remove button should be visible. And similarly to the another button, I'll wrap it, and I'll say if is child visible property is false, show me the show child button. Okay, so now we have two buttons. Both button has the same handle click. By default, first time will show the button show child, and on click of that will show the child component, and on click of another remove button will hide the child component. And the key point here why we are doing this, we want to make sure whether our child disconnected callback has been called or not. And in the slide we already seen this method gets called up when you are removing the component from the DOM. And to demonstrate that, we have only one option to remove the child component and put the disconnected callback in the child component. So we will remove this child component from the parent component, and this method should get called up. Okay, and to visualize this, suppose if I put the console, I will not able to see this because the time we click remove child, it will remove the component, right? I'll put the alert this time. Visualize this. Suppose if I put the console, I will not able to see this because the time we click remove child, it will remove the component, right? I'll put the alert this time. This will gives us a better visualization. Show me this component, right? I'll put the alert this time. So whenever it's about to remove, show me this alert message, okay? This will gives us a better visualization whether this method has been called or not. So I have given a text alert child disconnected callback called. Okay, and a real-time example, if many people might think where you're gonna use this and how it's gonna help you from the memory leak, I'll show you after this. Okay, so let's deploy this and see how it behaves, and I'll show you the power of this method in a minute. Okay, so right now we just checking on adding or removing the DOM whether this disconnected callback is getting called up or not. Let's go to our org, refresh the page. So by default, this show child button is coming, but the child component is not rendering. So right now I clear the console, nothing is there. So if I click show child, now you see it immediately call the child component constructor, child connected callback, child render method, and then parent rendered callback. Okay, so the order is same that we discussed in the mounting phase, because right now we are in the creation phase of the child, because on click of show child, we are in the creation phase. Now we're gonna enter into the removal phase or the unmounting phase. So if I click the remove child, it will remove this component, and while removing the component, it should call the disconnected callback method. So as I click it here, see here the alert box is coming, child disconnected called. So it called that method, and once it gets removed, again our parent render method gets called up, because we are updating the properties here. And whenever something gets changed, so here we are updating the property, right? So whenever something change in the property, the render method get called again. Okay, so this is how your disconnected callback works. So let me show you another example actually where you're gonna use it. So many times you would have seen we use window.add event listener, and to add event listener we'll say our event name is click, and whenever somebody click on the whole window, you call this method handle click, right? So you attach it to the window property, and window property exists till the time your browsers run, right? It doesn't matter whether you remove the component or not, right? So that caused the memory leak issue, and to solve that, we'll remove the event listener in the disconnected callback. So what we do is we'll say window.remove event listener and this listener. This is the method that gets called on click, and whenever you are remove the component, will remove the listener from the window as well. Okay, so this connected callback is very useful to from the performance point of view as well, and to avoid the memory leak. This is one example. The another example you can think of, like whenever you set up some set time, set timeout, right, or set interval again and again, and while going out, because set timeout and set interval are the property of window, and we already discussed about these two methods in our JavaScript videos, right? So if you say window dot set interval and you're calling some method again and again, right? And this is attached, this interval is attached to window, and when you are removing the component, this interval still run behind the scene until unless you explicitly remove it. And to remove that, you need to store it into a variable, interval, something, any variable, and in your disconnected callback, you need to call it as window dot clear interval and pass your interval reference. Okay, so this should be exactly a outside. You can create a variable and you can do like this. Many people will say, okay, what he's saying. So I create a property in which I store the reference of the set timeout interval, and I'm going to clear it when I'm disconnecting my component from the child. Okay, or disconnecting my component basically. So here these are the some approach you need to follow. We'll see when we build a real-time project, you'll see everything what you are learning right now with real-time examples. Okay, so this is the disconnected callback, and this is the unmounting phase of our lightning web component. So that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next video. In this video we'll talk about lifecycle hook in error phase. So in error phase we also have one lifecycle hook, that is error callback, but this lifecycle hook contains two arguments. First is the error argument, second is the stack argument. Error argument is an object and the stack is a string, and this method calls when a descendant component throws an error in one of its callback. Basically this lifecycle hook is used to catch an error that occurred in any of other lifecycle hooks. Okay, let's go and see this. I'm back to my VS Code, and this time what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna explicitly throw a error in the child component. So I'm in the child component, and I'll say in the connected component, you know how we can throw the error. Use throw keyword and you can create the error using the new error constructor, and I'll say loading of child component failed. So I'm creating a error message right now, loading of child component failed. So whenever the child component load, it throw this error, and as soon as it throws an error in the parent component, I'm gonna catch that error under the error callback. I'll say error callback. Error callback takes two arguments, error and stack, and we'll console the error message as well as the stack. So now whenever we load the child component, it will throw an error immediately in the console. You will see the error message in the stack. Stack is in the form of string that tells us while rendering which component you see this error. Okay, so let's deploy this component and see how it behaves. So I refresh the page, I'll clear my console, and now if I show the child, it will go to the creation phase of the child component, and under the child component we already explicitly throwing an error in the connected callback. So now as I click on show child, it go to the child constructor, it go to the child connected callback, and it immediately throws an error, and that error is printing in the lifecycle parent component under the connect error callback, and the stack it's showing okay, this error is coming from this component, child component, and then it continue the execution of child render callback and the parent render call. Okay, so this is how you can capture the error. You can store this error and show on the screen whichever way you want. And to store, you already know you need to store it into a variable and use that variable onto the screen. So this is how your error callbacks work, or how your error lifecycle phase works. So till now we covered the mounting phase, unmounting phase, and the error phase. So we are left with the render method now. So in the next video we'll talk about render method. So I'll see you in the next video. In this video we'll talk about render method. So a render method is a method that tells the component which template to load based on some condition. But till now we have used only a single HTML file in our component, but it is possible to add multiple HTML file in a component. Okay, so render method tell which HTML to load based on some condition. Basically it always returns the template reference. Template reference is nothing, it's just the which template to load. Okay, the key point to remember here is the renderer method is not technically a lifecycle hook. That's why I bring this topic separately, and it is a protected method on the lightning element class. Second point to remember is call this method to update the UI. It may be called before or after the connected callback. Okay, and the third point to remember, it is rare to call render in a component. The main use case is to conditionally render a template. But now the many people ask this question, right? If you already have if true and if false directive to conditionally render the component, why we need render method? So to answer that question, we have another slide. So if true and if false is recommended when there is a small template to hide and show, right? Ideally, it's always recommend to break down your component into a smallest unit. And whenever we have a scenario in which we have a same business logic, but we want to render a component with more than one look and feel, we go with the render method. And whenever we have two design in same component but don't want to mix the HTML in one file, or we don't want our HTML file to be of 2000 lines, it's always good to divide your HTML into different HTML files. Okay, so let's go and see how it works. So I'm in my VS Code now. In all the files, and now let's create a component. I'll say render method is my component name. So here is my render method component, and first thing, to use the render method we need to use multiple HTML file. Okay, so let's create HTML file. First HTML file I'll create sign in template.html. It can be any name, right? Your one name should be same as the your component name for the HTML file. So we already have a render method.html. Now I'm creating two another templates. One is sign in template.html. Another one is sign up template.html. So now we have two templates. Okay, and now we want to first add something inside the template, and in LWC each template start with a template tag. I'll copy paste the same tag here. I'll say first h1 I am signing, and I'm sign up. I guess this template is sign up, and I'll copy paste the same code and paste inside the sign in template. I'll say I'm sign in. Okay, now we import the reference actually. So the term we were using in the slide, the reference. So we are taking the reference of the component. Our component name is sign in template, not the component name, the template name actually. And we want to import it from sign in template.html. Here the extension is important. Same thing we want to import for sign up as well. So I'll say I have a sign up template reference, and the path is sign up template.html. And now the third part we want of this our existing HTML file that is coming by default with a component, that is, we'll say import render method or render template. I'll say from the path is render method.html. Now I have all reference of all three HTML files now, right? Now as I said, render method help us to render the HTML conditionally. So first create the render method like our lifecycle hook, we also have the render as a keyword, or the method as a keyword, I would say. So don't give any custom method name as render. Okay. And now it will return always a reference of the template. So if I say sign in template, it will load the sign in template. If I say sign up template, it loads the sign up template, right? So let's load the by default template right now, that is the render template, and let's add something here as well. I'll say, hey, I am default template, and let's add some meta file. I'll replace this meta file, making it visible and giving the target lightning app page. Let's deploy this. So till now we haven't done anything specific. We have just created 3 HTML template, and in the JS file we are just loading the default template, that is render template. Let's go to our page in the org and edit the page. Let me close my console, search for the render method, and that is the component name, and hit save. Let's go back. Now you will see it will show a text like I am a default method or default template. So here you can see it's printing, hey, I am a default template. Let's add some styling as well. But here the point I want to prove is you can add the reference and return the template reference with the render method, and it will load that HTML on the screen. If I give the reference of sign up, it will load that particular reference. Now here I have a requirement. I have a page with the sign up and sign in, right, form, and I want to render it based on a button click. Okay, and to do that, let's start styling our component first. So first style should be with our main template, and for the main template you already know first thing will always start with our lightning card, and within the lightning card you already know we have to add some margin, slds variable margin, and I can give the margin around of size medium. Now we have the div. Now these are the classes you already seen in the CSS. I'll give some heading as well to my component. I'll say I already have given the heading to the card, but now I'm giving a text heading specifically. Okay, I'm saying choose your options. Okay, choose your option, and I want to show this in a little bit bigger font, and we already have a class for that, that is slds text heading medium. So that class is slds text heading medium, and we want to give some margin bottom as well. To do that, I can copy paste the above class again. I'll change around to bottom. So instead of giving around, I'm giving some bottom margin so that my text will get some space below it, right? And now I want two buttons to be there. So we already know how to create button. Button will take variant. Variant is giving the default style. So I'll say destructive. There is a variant you can see in the library. And then the label I want to show on the button is sign up. And apart from that, title I can give sign up. And apart from that, I need a handler here. So I can say on click, I'll give a method handle click. And below this, I can give some left margin because I'm gonna place another button and I don't want those two buttons to be stick together. I'll say slds margin left extra small. Here we were giving medium size, here I'm giving a small size, and it's a left size, not the bottom one. Okay, I'll close the button. I'll copy paste the same button below, and I'll keep the handler same. I'll change the variant to success. I'll change the label to sign in and title to be sign in. I'll keep rest of the thing as it is. So right now I have a handler, and the handler I want to add it into the JS file. So on click of the button, I want to call this handler, and on click of this, what I'm gonna do is I'll create first a property here that will store what is the label. I'll say selected button. Initially it's empty. I can initialize it with empty string, and I can say this dot is selected equal to, and here every click will receive event as a feedback. So I'll say event dot target dot label, and in the label, not here, will receive an event, and from the event we'll extract the label, and the label is nothing that is sign up and sign in, right? So that we are storing into the selected button. And now as we talk, render method display the template based on the conditions. So what we're gonna write here is we'll check if this dot selected button equal to your text sign up. I'm using a ternary operator. If it is equal to sign up, then load the sign up template. Otherwise, check this dot selected button equal to sign in. So if he has clicked the sign in button, then load the sign in template. Otherwise, load the default template, that is render template. So first time when the component loads, selected button is empty, it loads the render template. As soon as you click on any of the button that is available on the render method.html, whether it's a sign in button or sign up, immediately the selected button will receive that label, and the render method automatically update that template. Okay, let's deploy this and see how it works. So now I refresh the page. Now you can see we have a text h1, the h2 we use in the HTML, then we have sign up button with destructive variant and success variant for sign in button. So right now it's load the default template. If I click on sign up, it should load the sign up template. Say I'm a sign up, right? But we don't have any other option on the sign up page, so I can't go back. So let's create the form quickly on the sign up page as well. Let's go our render method component and sign up template. And on the sign up template, we're gonna create the form. First, we're gonna create the card. We can copy paste the same thing from here for sign up template. Save, and I'll say lightning card. Then same thing we can copy paste in the sign in page as well. I'm pasting it same here as well. Okay, so first thing what we're gonna do is we're gonna add some heading as well. Instead of this h2, we'll copy this h2 and come to the sign in page, and I'll change the text only. I'll say sign in form, and in the sign up form also I'll paste the text and I'll change this to sign up form. So the text will be visible there. Now apart from that, we want something, some input fields on our form, right? So I'll just use this, and then I can add some lightning input. And that of type text, and I can give some label. I'll say first name. I'll close this. I'll copy paste this below as well, 3 or 4 times I can say. So I'll say the another text type, last name. Then I can change the type to email. It should be small, type name should be small, and I can say email address. Apart from that, we can, in sign up, we can ask password. So type should be password and the label should be password. Apart from that, we can create the button. I'll go to the HTML. We already created the buttons. I'll copy paste or both the buttons. in the sign in template, and let's the color and all everything remain same, and I'll say label to be back, and back, let's keep the handler name different because we have only one JS file, so I'll change it to submit handler, and no, this should be, we can keep it as a handle click, because on back of the but click of back we want to send something to my handle click as well, right? And on that I'm passing the back text. Okay, so if I click back, it automatically go back to the render template, right? Because that's not equal either to sign up or sign in. So I'll call the handle click on back button, and on success I can call that success handler here in my JS file. I'll say console.log sign in successfully. Okay. Similarly, for the sign up page, okay, this we just wrote the sign up code. I'll copy paste the whole code. In sign up, usually we ask for this sort of thing. I'll change it to sign up form. So in sign up, we ask first name, last name, email, and password. But in sign in, we're gonna remove the first name and the last name. Just give me the email address and the password. And the button is sign in here. And in the sign up, we'll say sign up. I can keep the same handler you can create based on your thing. Okay, and in the JS file, what I'm gonna do is I'll again use the same event, and I'll say I'll use a string interpolation. If you click sign up button, it will print sign up successfully. If you click sign in button, it will print sign in successfully, because the label is sign in and the sign up, right, for submit handler. Let's deploy this and see how it behaves. So here if you see, we have two forms. They have the same logic, like you have to submit it, take the data and submit it, but the HTML is pretty long. For sign up, it's a different form, sign in, it's a different form. So then in that sort of scenario, you can use a render method. Okay, so let's go and refresh the page. So now if I click on sign in, it's coming to the sign in page. Okay, and if I open this, my inspect element, and click on sign in, you can see it's printing sign in successfully. So this is how you are using the single JS file from different HTML. And now if I click on back, it's going back to the normal state. Now if I'm clicking sign up, you will see sign up button, and if I click sign up button, you will see sign up successfully. Validation and all other things you can change, or you can write that code, but you see the form is also changing. Now in the sign up we have 4 fields, in the sign in we were having the 2 fields. So this is how our render method works, and we already seen how we can create it, and I already explained you why we prefer render over if else or if true or if false directive. And we very rarely use this hook, but at least you should know how it works, how it behaves. And whenever you have such a big scenario in which your template is going above certain length and you want to flip the templates, you can use the render method. So that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next video.